Um, so this is pertaining to something I just came to realize, like I've been doing, but I'm like to put the word to the thing, right? These last cycles of contracts basically that I closed out, which is like how I was working with people and who I was surrounding myself with in the recent past, and then I have just let go of, right? So lovers, family, friends, business, right? Because I realized something. I realized how people will try to make you feel, right? And knowing that people respect you more, not even respect you more, people like you more because it's not coming from a place of love. They like you more and you're more palatable when you're powerless, when you're not fully doing all the things that you know you can do, and when you're using your internal energy to pour into other people, thinking that that's what you're supposed to be doing, which is what you're supposed to be doing. But when it's not reciprocal, that's just like an energy leak. That's just what it is like. And then people assume that you're doing it from the same place that they're doing it from, which is the source of validation, right? So when people realize, oh, they're not doing this to feel validated from other people, they're doing this because they genuinely want to do it. So in their mind, they may try to laugh at that, like, oh, you're kind of silly or slow for doing that, right? Or it's from a place of um envy because wow, you do not need validation from outside sources to continue to produce, to continue to be and exist and walk in your power. Or you're not as powerful because you're not using all of this power strictly for yourself. So either way it plays out, it's a conflicting thing for them. It's something that doesn't sit well with them because whichever reason they can't get behind it, or they don't understand it, or they cannot do it themselves. And they also benefit from the version of you that's giving. And so they like to have you around. But like I said, that grows into resentment. And my reasoning for letting these past things go was because I realized I was ignoring what they were ignoring. I realized I was ignoring that. So it's like that was the last thing. Like, oh, you can't ignore what people are showing you, right? You can't ignore what you're giving and then seeing what people are doing with it. You can't ignore that. They're not using it towards something good or they're not using it in the way that it should be used, right? So, like I said, they'll either band together and dislike you for that reason, or they'll dislike you for the reason that you can keep going regardless of being supported externally. Not ever coming to the conclusion that you're the reason you don't need to be supported externally is because you're being supported internally through self, through God like energy, right? That never crosses people's minds until you sever ties. And then they almost become obsessed because they things start to feel different in their world. And then they realize I was feeling this way because of their energy. But yeah, that was the last reason for severing ties is because nobody can break my spirit. And if something goes wrong, I automatically write it off as it was never meant to last. While some people like it does take me um it had taken me in the past a while to come around and be able to just sit with it because I would grieve, but I allow myself to grieve, and that's the thing about us people. They try to do this fake prideful thing, and then or they like blast these contracts that they're gotten out of or relationships or things, right? They try to blast it after it's gone out of pride. Like, oh, I never needed this. I never needed that. I never needed this job. I never needed this friend. I never needed this lover. I never needed this support or this support from these things wasn't never really about shit. They wasn't shit. This thing wasn't doing anything for me. Like it's a pride thing. Instead of just realizing like, hey, I got what I got from that. Um, let me let me grieve it because you have to grieve things. As human beings, you grieve everything. It's like you make a great meal, something that you've been wanting, and then you finally make it. You get your nostalgia, you get your sustenance, you feel nourished, and then when it's gone completely, no leftovers, no nothing left, right? You grieve it, but you're also thankful. You're supposed to be thankful and grateful that you got to experience it. And that's anything. That's just my way of saying it for that. But that's anything. That's things that come into your life and be a blessing, or things that come into your life and you just gather some wisdom from it. You learn what to do and you learn what not to do. You trial and error and then you be grateful for it because it's like, dang, if I never would have did this, I would have never got better at it. But that pride is what keeps people from just grieving without making a scene, you know? And I think that would be the main reason why people will resent certain aspects of other people is their ability to grieve and let go without causing chaos, without causing external conflict, and knowing how to deal with internal conflict in a peaceful manner, in a calm, wash away manner. Like, but yeah, I was I was ignoring the same things they were ignoring, and they oh, thought that I was doing it for the same reasons they were, to not feel pain, to feel needed, and for a younger part of my life, and a younger version of me, that was the case. But after learning how to grieve and let go, especially death, I feel like that's like the biggest thing that has really helped me to grieve and let go of everything else because I feel like that's the ultimate form of grieving. And that's normally what people think of when they hear the word grieve. But if you're a person that doesn't know how to grieve worldly things that didn't die and pass on, you can harbor resentment and anger towards things because you're not allowing yourself to grieve all parts of life. But yeah, they think that it's coming from the same place a lot of the time. When those ties sever, they continue to fester on things instead of just letting things be. And that's another, like, people would think it's beef because when they do that, or when somebody has done that to them in the past, they took it as beef when it was never that. Sometimes it's just people just let go. People know when to let go. People admire you and might despise you for being able to not acknowledge when it's time to let go. And then they will try to place that on you because they can't live their lives like that. So they will string along things that have been needing to get let go of for a long time. So they just walk around feeling very, very heavy. And like I said, that was the last thing I was ignoring because seemingly everything looked and felt at first like meaningful connections. But it turned sour once people realize you overlooking certain things wasn't out of naivety, it was out of hope, or it wasn't out of needing validation or people pleasing. It was truly out of hope that people will see the light in situations and honor the light in situations instead of allowing resentment to get the best of them. And then when they realize that you weren't ignoring or you weren't not noticing, you were just taking note. And so it makes them feel like they got or they got bested, they got outsmarted. But only people who are trying to best or outsmart or get over on people would think like that. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, this person was never naive. They just give fair chances. And this person didn't just leave to because some people they'll leave with the idea of wanting people to crawl back to them so that they could feel like they got the one up. But no, people like us, it's like you leave to dodge a bullet. You leave to let go of something that you see is not going to prosper because you're only here to strive and prosper, to thrive and prosper. Not strive, thrive and prosper. So when you realize this is not a thriving environment or no longer is a thriving environment, this is no longer prosperous, I'm gonna let that go because dodging a bullet was that keeping yourself from getting harmed or killed energetically or spiritually, physically, however it play out. But yeah, once people realize that, it's almost like how do they? It's like a hero villain arc. The hero learns from the villain, and the villain learns from the hero. Mhm. And it's all about integration, the ability to move. I always had that. It's a people don't realize that blind faith is real. People don't realize that there are still people in the world who are not hiding behind religion or faith. whether they go to church or not, whether they look like a I don't like the term God fearing because you do not fear God when you know you are of God, unless you fear yourself. That's the only reason you would be God fearing. So I never like that term, but people who follow God, when it doesn't look exactly how people expect, some people will test it and test it and test it. But you're not testing a person, you're testing God because somebody who follows God in their inner, that's that inner God and has a unshakable self-concept because they have an unshakable faith in God, the God within and the God around you. They don't realize that they're testing God until everything comes undone. So people don't become obsessed with you, they become obsessed with God energy that you have in you because you're not a person hiding behind a religion. You're not using that to make it your own will. You're genuinely following every moment. I've always in my mind had an unshakable doubt that I will and can have whatever I want. And I seen this video, um, what's her name? Sierra Leah, the day trader. She's very popular now. And she speaks about wealth mindset and coming from a lack mindset and coming from growing up in poverty into now being wealthy and how most people don't think about that. And then people equate wealth to white people or evil or things outside of themselves and are more comfortable with poverty and when you come from that. And it just made me think about that. Like some people don't want to see the other side. Like, and she was talking about how she always believed that she can have anything or do anything if she really put her mind to it. And I have always had that same belief. And I was like, that makes so much sense. Because people will preach this to children, but not really believe it themselves. So how are you preaching something that you do not practice, you know? And that's the thing about when it comes to faith. A lot of people think that when it comes to faith, that that's what people are doing. Preaching something, but not really fully believing it. Preaching something, but not practicing it. But then when they come across people who fully live in that faith blindly and how life always puts them on top, they can't fathom it and they will try to test it because it's a lack of belief. It's like a scientist trying to prove a theory. They would go through so many things um and still not try to believe something when it pops up in their face on multiple occasions with different people. I got that scene from Doctor Strange, right, where his hands was fucked up in the first movie. He was a surgeon. Um and he was trying to do everything to heal himself. And he came across that woman through the man who was never supposed to walk again. And she told him, I didn't heal him. I just convinced him that he can walk. And he walked. And she told him that. And he was like, so you expect me to believe that? Fully in his mind, knowing the man's case and that he was not supposed to walk. And seeing him walk and play basketball. So you've seen it with your own two eyes beforehand. But when somebody is telling you that this is the truth, you still don't want to believe the truth. And that would be the case for a lot of people. They will ask and seek out these answers to these questions, and then when it's put directly in their face, they do not want to believe it. These are the people who only believe seeing is believing, right? That's another like scientist perspective, right? The same people that will be like seeing is believing, still like it will see it and not believe it. With a blind faith person, never needed to see it to believe it. Always knowing that if it exists in some shape or fashion, and I desire that, then I can have that. And it started off from, oh, if this exists in the world and other people can have it, that means I can have it. I always thought that. But how are you going? That's the same thing about not practicing what you preach. Seeing is believing, but you seeing it and you still not believing it. You're continuously going against yourself, continuously going against your word, and wondering why you don't feel whole, wondering why you don't see what's happening until it's already passed you by, or until it's already removed from your life. You have something in your life that you wished for, but when it comes into your life, you'll neglect it out of not believing instead of honoring it. So when it's gone from your life, you obsess over it. You're continuously obsessing and saying you're chasing and wanting this thing, but you're really running from it. You're not chasing nothing, you're running from it because it's always coming to you. God will always bring it to you. But if you run from it or don't honor it, it will also be removed from you, and always giving to situations and people more deserving, because that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Like, that's just how God works. And people who operate in that God, they're going to continuously do that in life as well. They're going to be a blessing, receive blessings and be a blessing, and give and take away them blessings that they have control over themselves and the things that they are blessed with, because it's what God intended. That's all. But it really just made me think of that. I was like, that was the last thing. Because God, people paint this giving grace and being the bigger person as being godlike. But God never intended people to behave in that way. God always intends for you to walk in it, know it, and be it. And don't play with it. And don't play about it. God never said be the bigger person. And I saw something, and it wasn't like a Bible verse, but it was talking about how Jesus moved throughout the Bible. They were like, Jesus avoided certain towns, avoided certain people, and didn't deal with certain things. And that was not him being uppity. That was him operating in his God. That was him having discernment and not giving to things that he shouldn't be given to, and giving to who he should be given to. But people take that being the bigger person, and he shook some shit up, and he knew how to flip that switch when he needed to, if he ever found himself in a situation. That's what people don't see. God wants you to always honor yourself. That's the only way he can fully, fully use you to better yourself and to better whoever you encounter. That's a way to stay blessed and to always be a blessing. And that's what I have. That just crossed my mind because I was like, that's my main reason because as humans, especially if you're moving, that's what I meant to say. Like I always had in my mind, like I'm never gonna let nothing come between me and what I know I deserve. Always, always, always. And I'm gonna call it preventative care for the medical people. Y'all know what that is. Or if you go to the doctor, right? Preventative care. So you're taking certain steps and avoiding certain things to prevent sickness or illness or infection, right? So in my eyes, I always was willing to do that. I was always willing to wait for what I deserve. And I was always willing to protect what I currently have so that I don't omit or exempt myself from what I deserve. I've always understood that. That you, right, they're saying, they say people don't let people trick you out of your spot. But in reality, you're only tricking yourself out of your spot because however you think is what you allow, right? In my mind, I always thought, I'm going to be willing to let go of whatever I have to let go of to not live a life that I do not deserve and to live a life that I do deserve. I'm going to always be willing, ready, and able to do that. But yeah, even when you think you were ignoring certain situations, you weren't ignoring. You were giving the benefit of the doubt because that was something that a learned or taught thing tied to God energy, right? But that's God's job. That's what people fail to realize. That is the external God. The internal God, the self, is not supposed to be in charge of that. You're only supposed to be in charge of yourself. And everything else that God does, that's how you operate. But when it comes to giving the benefit of the doubt, that is for God to do. That is for God to bring people into other people's lives and to see how people operate with the gifts that they are given by God. That is for God to do. That is for God to better than people. You are in charge of self. You are in charge of showing up in your God energy always and honoring yourself and protecting self. God will do all the rest. God gives the benefit of the doubt. We were never intended to do those things. God always levels the playing field. God will always balance the scales. That was never our job. Outside of the internal, not your job. That is not your job. And I just thought of what's her name? Tashana. Tashana Arnold's Pam, or Everybody Hates Chris, the mother, where she would work a job, right? And she could get a job real easy. But whenever they had her fucked up, the first thing that she would say was, I don't need this. My man got two jobs. And she'll dip up out of there immediately. right there, that second, that day. And that's all that God requires of you. God never wants you to regress your own progress or sacrifice yourself for others. They say that that's what God sent Jesus here for, whatever in the Bibles and all that, right? And I've said this before, self-sacrifice is not of God. That is a suicide mission. Self-sacrifice for others is a suicide mission. You're just going to weaken and continue to weaken and deplete yourself and take on things that you are never supposed to take on and regress progress that you have made for others who will take the energy that you give them and not do what you expected them to do with it. And they will not give back to you when you're getting depleted. So God will dead that. And if you continue to put yourself in that situation and you're not dead in the situation, God will let you do that to yourself. Mm, yeah, we're supposed to give grace. We're not supposed to be saving grace. Hmm. So when people are not respecting who you are, how you show up, what you have to offer anymore, whether they did it in the beginning, the middle, they're not doing it at any point, it's your right to make the corrections you need to make for yourself. Being the bigger person, and that's another thing too, it makes me think about, I've always said, personally, my own personal journey, I can't speak for nobody else, um, that God, or I always say karma. I said karma is almost instant when it comes to me. So whenever I fall out of alignment, there are going to be things that are loud. Things get very loud, and things will start to happen very loudly to where I'll be like, okay, I didn't, I didn't, you know, went off the path a little bit. Or if I do something I know in my mind I have no business doing, I know damn well I have no business doing. In the past, when I used to do that, instantly something will happen and I couldn't do nothing but laugh because I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. To where it felt like I was in the goddamn sitcom. And I always say this because it always happens. Like that internal, that deep inside joke type shit that I will always have with God. It was always an inside joke. Like God will put something right in your face. And for me, it has to be blatant, right? And I'd be like, okay. And I laugh because I'd be like, okay, okay, I know. That happened in the past. Whether however long ago I did it, it will show up again to be like, oh, you remember when you did this? I ain't forget about that. And you trying to do some shit like that again. So I'm popping up this from the past, this old shit that you did that you probably regretted. Yeah, I'm gonna pull that back up so you can remember that. You don't want to repeat that. So I'm gonna pop this up again so you don't repeat that in what you're trying to do now in this moment. Because you know you shouldn't. And you know what you should be doing. And I've always said that to other people too. Um, that's another thing too. Like when I say removing yourself is the best way to give grace in them type of situations. Because if you know how God is behind you, you know that that's the best thing to do. Well, let me get the fuck up out of your face. Because then you start to have sympathy for people who try to hang you out to dry. Because when you know how God comes behind and corrects, you be like, damn, let me get the fuck away from these people before God do some shit that nobody can ignore, me or them. And that's another thing. Especially when you leave, God will really show them people to why they should have never done some shit in the first place. Because when you leave, that's when it's like a tsunami. You pull back that wave and keep pulling it back for you and them separately. Because everybody's karma is separate. But when you intermingle with certain people, you might take a hit from their karma. That's like y'all both sitting on the shore together, and maybe your karma isn't, what you did was was slightly something that you probably shouldn't have did, but this person that you were connected to, sitting with at that shore on that beach, they did some shit that they know and kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. So they wave getting pulled back further and further and further. Meanwhile, your wave got pulled back mm, a few hundred feet. Their wave getting pulled back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 miles. So God will give you yours in front of this person, and they will think, "Oh, I'm getting away with this," and you will know once you get your little bit of karma, them few hundred feet, that wave, the few hundred feet wave, come back and hit both of y'all, and they're like, "Oh, this is nothing. I can keep going on." But then when you get hit by that wave that was yours, that's just a warning, wake up call for you. Okay, I know I shouldn't do that. Or I know I shouldn't be connected to this thing, this person, this energy, this contract. So let me go ahead and make my exit. Let me leave the beach for today. Let me leave the beach or let me walk along the beach and go find where I'm supposed to be sitting at. And as soon as you leave by the side of that person, that energy, that contract, that wave that they didn't racked up, that 6, 5, 6, 7, 8 mile wave finally come crashing back down. Because God didn't want it to hit you because that wasn't your karma. God didn't want it to hit you, which is why you had to remove yourself. And then you realize some people, that's what it takes. Or it'll be one of two things. When you leave, whatever happens to that person, they might resent you for it because they know the things that they did, but they still want to blame you for it because they did it to you. Sick and twisted, I know. Like how dare I get karma for the things that I did to you? And it's your fault because I did these things to you. And so I got this karma. No, that could be one way. And then they will continue to do them type of things and continue to be mad at people outside of themselves, right? Or they realize, damn, I got hit this way because I did this with the gift that God gave me. The gift of this contract, the gift of this job, the gift of this person, the gift of this community, whatever the case may be. Once you leave up out of there and then that happens, they get hit by that 8 mile wave, that tsunami, they be like, wow, I see. This thing was so giving to me. Um, and I did this with it. And that's not what God intended. And I knew that's really what I shouldn't have been doing, but I wanted to do things that I wanted to do. And I wanted to benefit from it, which is why I got smacked the way that I did after this thing got removed. Because God didn't want it to hit them because they didn't deserve that. That was all for me. That was my karma. Or sometimes God will let shit smack you, literally, from personal experience, right? And then you will leave that situation from being smacked down by that karma, or not even karma, a situation, just to show, and you will be unscathed, you will be unaffected, and that would be God showing you, like, hey, I'm protecting you. You see this? I'm always protecting you, but stop putting yourself in these situations to where I have to overly protect you because you know better, and that'll be that. And then outside looking in, the people will see how protected you are. And some, like I said, they might resent you for that, but you're only so protected because you continue to walk in that faith. You continue to walk in that faith. You walk forwards, backwards, side step to the left, side step to the right. You walk, spin, maneuver, dip out of faith. But people get that twisted with physical so bad they think it's based off something physical, some physical attribute that you have, because their faith is performative. Their faith is, like I said, hiding behind a religion, hiding behind seeing is believing, hiding behind not practicing what you're preaching. But you're still preaching it, but you're still not practicing it. So that way you're not fully believing it. That's why you don't fully get the benefits of it. Because you're not fully believing it. It's like how they used to paint it as kids for believing in Santa Claus. You don't believe, so of course you're not gonna see. I think that was the theme of the Polar Express too. I think only the children that were allowed to get on the train were the children that actually believed. Y'all get to see the whole glory behind all of this because y'all actually believe full and wholeheartedly. Meanwhile, the other people they're gonna get gifts. They still get gifts from Santa, right? They're still gonna get gifts from Santa, but they don't get to see the full glory behind it. They don't get to bask in that energy the way the ones who believe wholeheartedly do. Yep, that's all though. I think that was the one. And I don't know what movie is playing in the background that my grandmother was in here watching, a Lifetime movie or something. And it's about this lady who's saying, I don't know, something about God and angels and stuff too. But I just had this conclusion because I was like, people think that I was ignoring, and I wasn't ignoring, I was just giving the benefit of the doubt. And I was reminded by my own God energy and the God energy around me that that's not my job. It never was. But being raised in, I will say the word groomed, but not necessarily grooming, but it is. You're molded to be a giver. When you're molded to be a giver, it comes naturally to you, right? But you have to discern who, when, how, and where to be that, like I said. And I feel like that was the last thing. Because in every situation, I was still given the benefit of the doubt. But the true message is always your discernment When you discern something and when your intuition tells you something, go strictly off of that. Do not go give benefit of the doubt to something that already pinged your intuition. Or if it doesn't immediately ping your intuition, the moment it does, do exactly what you need to do in that moment. After something pings, you're no longer required to have hope and faith in things if they're not showing you what they initially showed you. And that's the thing that people don't realize, like, especially like people who seek out spiritualities who see who they're going to be connected to all the time, and that's the main thing that people be worried about, or see what they're going to get, see the good things they're going to get. A lot of the times, people don't seek out God or spirituality or faith to see about what they need to work on. They do it to seek out what good things they can get out of it, right? But you have to pay attention to everything you do because what shows up one way, things are always changing. Energy is always shifting. People's energy is going to always shift. The energy in the world is always shifting. Nothing is set in stone. That's what people fail to realize. And especially people who try to, like I said, will get over until they realize, oh, this person was just really given the benefit of the doubt and having hope and faith in the situation. They weren't going to continue to allow, they were never going to allow me to use them. They can't be used. That's the only time people will realize that. But contracts, energy, all of that changes. Contracts end. People's energy shifts based off where their headspace is at. And if something is no longer being honored, that's the end of a contract. That's what people fail to realize, and they're constantly chasing things because they remember what it felt like. I heard that. But yeah, that was on my mind. Was never ignoring, was always taking notes, or stopped ignoring and taking notes, and immediately just started operating off of them pings that you get. Intuition. I feel like that's really the final step for me, or in general in the journey. For most people, it's the final step to being able to fully be a vessel and fully move and operate out of that, out of that God self. It's no longer benefit of the doubt. It's just strictly intuition, strictly gauging when the energy shifts, whether it shifts for the better or the worse, and not going against it. Once something changes, you are required to change. It made me think about retail, where some places, but I don't think they do this anymore. Where I know older people, tend to collect coupons, and they may go to a place with their coupon and say their coupon expired the day before or 2, 3 days before. and a manager or employee will ask, "Hey, can this has just expired?" Da, 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 da. But then the manager, or whatever, will honor the coupon. They call that honoring it, even though it was expired. You're not required to do that. Just like they're not required to do that, but they did that. You're not required to do that. Once something is expired, you're not meant to honor that coupon and contract to keep going forward, to keep allowing that thing or other energy to benefit. You're not required. That's God. And then also with contracts that expire, especially between companies, um, if people like what's going on and we had it set for this many years or a year, 2 year, 3 year contract, but we still love your work. We still love the employees that have been working with you on this contract for us. So we're going to renew this, right? All of that is for God to determine and you to use your intuition about it. That's not your job as well. Your intuition will let you know, and then you make that move. Otherwise, once you let a contract go or it expires, you have to let God decide if that contract gets renewed or if you move forward. Yeah, I've been sitting up here yapping. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Even if you're good hearted and you have the best intentions for yourself and others, just like people with bad intentions try to play God, you, as a person with good intentions, do not try to play God in anybody else's life but your own. You can play God in your own life to an extent, but there's a threshold with everything, there's a cutoff with everything. Like they say, give it to God. Them things, that's when you let that part go. And when it comes to other people's lives and other people's growth, you give that to God, external God. That's not for your internal God to handle. So stop playing God and just be, be that God. But stop playing God. Anyways, I love y'all. I hope y'all receive this with love.